When life continued after the goodbye was said, the goodbye was careful, complete, and emotionally final, spoken with the quiet confidence that comes only when everyone believes the story has reached its last page. Nothing about it felt unfinished. Nothing about it suggested continuation. And yet, continuation arrived anyway. This story matters now because modern life teaches us to rehearse endings long before they happen, to emotionally withdraw in advance, to prepare ourselves for loss by slowly closing doors that may not actually need to be closed yet. We are taught that this is wisdom, that anticipation is protection, that emotional preparation equals maturity. But what happens when the ending never arrives? The goodbye came after months of certainty, carefully worded conversations, subtle shifts in tone, plans reorganized around absence instead of presence. Everyone involved believed they were doing the compassionate thing by letting go early. She felt it in the atmosphere, in the way people lingered a little longer, in the way voices softened, in the way future plans were discussed without her name included. She was still there, but the world had already begun to step around the space she occupied. At first, she participated in the ritual. She said the things people say when they believe time is limited. She organized memories. She resolved unfinished conversations. She accepted the narrowing of possibility with calm restraint. The goodbye was not dramatic. It was gentle, responsible, almost peaceful, because when everyone agrees the story is ending, closure feels achievable. But time did not honor the agreement. Days passed, then weeks, then seasons. The body weakened in some ways, stabilized in others. Nothing collapsed, nothing resolved. Life simply continued. What made this unsettling was not survival. It was contradiction. The emotional ending had already happened, but the physical one refused to arrive. People did not know how to respond. They had already crossed the threshold, already adjusted their expectations, already begun living in a version of reality where she was gone, and now she remained. This is where the real story begins. Not at the goodbye, but after it, when life continues in the space that was already emptied, when time returns without explanation, when existence itself becomes inconvenient to the narrative everyone accepted, because surviving goodbye is not the same as being ready for what comes after. After the goodbye had already settled into memory, life took on an unfamiliar texture, where every additional day felt slightly out of place, as it belonged to a future that had not been emotionally authorized to exist. People checked it more often at first. Messages arrived filled with concern, but concern slowly faded into uncertainty, because no one had rehearsed what to do if the ending did not arrive on schedule. Conversations became cautious. Plans were suggested with conditions. Phrases like, "if you're up for it," or "we'll see how you feel," surrounded every invitation, quietly reinforcing the idea that her presence was provisional. She felt suspended between two versions of herself, the one who had already been mourned, and the one who was still waking up every morning. Emotionally, this was more disorienting than illness. Illness has a direction, but survival after farewell creates a void where meaning used to sit. She noticed how quickly people adapt to absence, how efficiently the world reorganizes itself, and how difficult it is to reverse that process once it has begun. Doctors spoke carefully now. They avoided absolutes. They focused on day-to-day stability. What mattered was not prognosis, but pattern. Her body existed in a state of fluctuation. Some days demanded rest. Others allowed movement. Nothing followed a clean arc. Everything required adjustment. What hurt most was not limitation. It was invisibility. The sense that her future had already been mentally removed from other people's calendars. She realized something uncomfortable. That saying goodbye early does not protect against pain. It simply relocates it, from loss to loneliness, from grief to ambiguity. The conflict deepened here, because continuing to live meant challenging the emotional conclusions others had already reached. It meant reopening space that had been carefully closed. And reopening space requires effort, presence, assertion, the willingness to exist fully even when others hesitate to witness it. Standing in that tension, she felt the weight of a decision forming, one that would determine whether the days ahead remained quiet extensions or became something she actively claimed. The question was no longer whether she would survive. It was whether she would allow herself to return. The conflict reached its deepest point when she understood that survival alone would never be enough to restore what had been emotionally dismantled, because once people rehearse an ending, they rarely know how to participate in continuation without discomfort. She could feel it in the pauses, in the way conversations stalled when she spoke about the future, in the subtle surprise that followed her plans, as if intention itself violated an unspoken agreement that life should now be winding down. What had been taken from her was not time, it was expectation, the assumption that her presence would continue naturally, without justification. Emotionally, this realization was heavier than fear. Fear as movement, this was stagnation, a quiet resistance that asked her to remain small so others could stay comfortable. She saw how the goodbye had reshaped relationships. Some people stayed distant, not from lack of care, but from uncertainty. They did not know how to engage with someone who had already been released in their minds. Doctors noticed a shift too, not in her vitals, but in her energy, a subtle withdrawal that had nothing to do with illness and everything to do with being emotionally unanchored. She was alive, yet treated as transitional, present, yet managed gently toward an ending that never came. This was the emotional peak, because she finally understood that waiting for others to readjust would mean living indefinitely inside their hesitation. And hesitation, prolonged long enough, becomes erasure. The choice in front of her was uncomfortable. Reassert herself, or slowly fade into the role already written for her. Reassertion meant risk. Risk of disappointment. Risk of rejection. Risk of being seen as unrealistic for imagining a future others had already closed. But fading carried its own cost. A slow disappearance while still breathing. A life reduced to careful monitoring rather than full participation. In that moment, clarity arrived. She did not survive the goodbye to remain half-present. She survived to live forward, even if the world resisted recalibrating. That understanding did not remove uncertainty. It gave her direction. And with direction came a quiet resolve. Not loud, not dramatic, but firm. If life was continuing, then she would meet it fully, even if she had to walk back into a future no one else was ready to acknowledge yet. The realization arrived not as a moment of victory, but as a steady, irreversible shift in how she understood her own right to exist fully, regardless of how prepared or unprepared others were to accept her continued presence. No one formally welcomed her back. No reset occurred. The world did not pause to realign its expectations. So she stopped waiting. She began speaking about the future without hesitation, making plans that extended beyond comfort, referring to upcoming months and distant seasons as if they were unquestionably hers, not to provoke, but to normalize continuation. At first, the response was awkward. Silences followed her confidence. Some people smiled politely, others changed the subject, but repetition did its work. Presence, sustained long enough, reshapes belief. Slowly, invitations widened, conversations deepened, assumptions softened, not because certainty returned, but because consistency demanded adjustment. She did not reclaim her life by force. She reclaimed it by inhabiting it, day after day, without apology, without asking permission to remain relevant. The goodbye lost its authority. It became a moment, not a conclusion, a chapter misread as an ending. This is what surviving the goodbye ultimately revealed, that preparing for loss too early can quietly steal life from the living. That emotional withdrawal, once rehearsed, is difficult to reverse, but not impossible. Her story is not about defying death. It is about resisting premature disappearance, about choosing presence in the uncomfortable space between prediction and reality. Because life does not end when a goodbye is spoken. It ends when participation stops. And as long as participation continues, so does meaning. When life